Good afternoon, everyone. Sheriff Tom Hodgson filling in for Barry Richards today. Barry is probably off laying on some beach somewhere having a great time, but I was really happy to have the opportunity to come in and fill in for Barry for the next 3 hours. And I thought this would be a great time to talk about what's going on in the nation, talk about what's happening in and around Bristol County, and get your views and your insights on what's happening to our world, and particularly our nation. When you see and by the way, we'll be having open phones all the way through, so I encourage you to call in with your questions, thoughts, ideas. That's what really makes the show, I think, hugely successful, is to hear from the people in the communities to understand what's going on in their minds in relation to government and quality of life of our community. So anyhow, it should be a fun 3 hours. I think a pretty informative 3 hours, and I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you. The call-in number is 508-996-0500, 508-996-0500. We're going to have open lines for the next 3 hours, and I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you. I thought I'd start out talking a little bit about the state of our nation. And I know that probably a lot of you out there, particularly those of you who may be close to my age, probably remember a time where people had the opportunity to share their points of view, be heard by somebody who may not necessarily agree, either in part or in total, with what the other person was saying, and still have a conversation that was rooted in respect for understanding that person might be coming from a different perspective, different place in life, different experience, and have a dialogue where you had the opportunity to perhaps even learn something that might change your own points of view after listening to that individual. But I think it's fair to say that for all of us, we're at a far different place now, a place that's not as open and engaging, and in fact has become very divisive and volatile. And I think that's a really sad place for our nation, because we as a country are better than that. We're at a time right now where employment is as high as it's ever been. The unemployment numbers have plummeted. The gross domestic product report today was incredible. I think it came in at about 4.1%. Our standing in the world with regards to our military power and the fact that the United States is not going to be pushed around and that we can be an influence to peace has never been better. ISIS is hiding out, running the other way now, where before they felt pretty confident to go just about anywhere they wanted and to wreak havoc on us as Americans and our allies and other people around the world, just because of who we are and what we believe in. And so we're at a pretty incredible place. Yet what we see going on right now in our country is this almost underlying hate for people having different points of view. If you dare to have a conversation with someone and express an opposing point of view, too often the people go out of their way that have the other point of view to demonize you, to look for ways to drag you down, simply because you don't agree with their thoughts. And that is not what America was founded on. It's not what our forefathers had ever intended. We are the United States of America. And I think too many people have lost sight of that and lost sight of our principles and our founding fathers' sort of guiding documents. So I'd love to hear from you as to whether or not you feel that we're at the very place that I'm describing, where it's so divisive that you're even afraid to give your point of view. Or if you have some other thoughts around how our nation got to this place, and more importantly, how do we take us back to the place where we could show the civility and respect that each of us deserves in a republic that is really a country that is the envy of the world. The other thing that's really, of course, a pressing issue is the issue, and it's the number one issue right now in the country, is this issue of immigration. Talk about divisiveness. I have to tell you that I believe that on both sides of the aisle in Congress, and I've been dealing with immigration reform for 20 years, going back to the days of Henry Hyde and Barney Frank. I have never been more convinced that the blueprint has never changed with regards to Congress, that on both sides of the aisle, immigration has been used as the political football to make the other party look worse to the immigrant community. And as a result, Congress's inaction for 20 years has contributed to this divisiveness we're seeing in our communities. People arguing over either pro-illegal positions or people that are saying, we want our laws enforced and we want the people who are doing it the right way to continue to do so. And in the meantime, while all these arguments are going back and forth about separation of children or, MS-13 and on and on and on, these varying arguments about DACA, what's happening is Congress is loving it because it takes the attention away from where the real problem is. And I've been saying this for a long time. Congress is the problem. Congress refuses to act on legitimate immigration reform. And meanwhile, we have these back and forth going on with the citizens, all of whom I think want to have a fair and equitable immigration program that is giving opportunity for as many people as we possibly can, yet at the same time controlling our growth. I'm going to go to the lines right now. I think we have a caller calling in, and I want to hear from you all. Hey, caller, are you on the air?
Hi, Sheriff. How are you?
How are you, caller?
Good. Could you tell your listeners about the approach that Tony Cabral has taken here in the 13th Bristol District and in the city of New Bedford and the state on secure communities and his unwillingness to allow law enforcement to exchange information on the bad guys, the illegals that are the bad guys. Let's use MS-13, for instance, or any other illegal immigrant that is a criminal. He doesn't think it's fair to allow law enforcement to exchange information with ICE. And I'll hang on so I can hear you, and I've got another question for you afterwards.
Okay, caller. Well, thanks for the question. I don't want to target Representative Cabral, but I will say that Representative Cabral certainly agrees with this sort of left-wing progressive group in Boston, and he has taken the position, and he and I have had conversations. It's been reported on in the press, of course, our differences, but unfortunately, he's taken the position that we should not be able, we being the sheriffs in this country, should not be able to work, or our law enforcement should work with ICE and cooperate in giving them information or them giving us information about people who are in our community illegally, particularly the criminal illegal aliens. And frankly, saying that we can't use any state funds to for our officers. For example, in our facility, we have officers that are trained in what we call 287G. So someone that's been arrested by a police department will come in. We have people who are trained by ICE and certified as ICE officers who, in the course of their normal duties, if somebody comes in and they're identified as foreign born, that they will interview that individual and have the access to the databases and so forth because they've been trained by ICE to determine, is in fact this person somebody that's wanted by ICE, and if so, to notify the supervisor at Burlington of the situation, at which time they will decide, okay, this person has for example, has been deported before, they came back, we have a warrant for them for some crime or what have you, hold that individual. So Representative Cabral doesn't believe that we should be using our personnel to do that. Now, let me go into something I think is very important. For those of us who are in the trenches every day, who are charged with protecting the law-abiding people of this nation, the citizens and legal residents who are here, for any elected official to tell us that we need to have less tools and do less cooperating with people who could otherwise give us a better chance of keeping a criminal from being released back into our neighborhoods to victimize more innocent people, that we should not be allowed to do that, is just outrageous. I had a conversation with Representative Cabral about this, and I told him, I said, how do you reconcile the fact that we have people that work for me full-time who are assigned to the FBI Terrorism Task Force, full-time, paid on our salary, who are also assigned to DEA, Immigration Customs Enforcement, and that's not just us, it's sheriff's offices across the Commonwealth and the nation, as well as police departments who have people assigned full-time, paid on their salaries. It makes all the sense in the world. Post 9/11, if there's anything we learned, it was we can't work in silos and still guarantee the people we're giving them our best foot forward to protect them. And that's why we need these relationships. And when I said that, I said, how do you pick one federal agency and say we can't work with them? And Representative Cabral's answer to me was, well, first of all, those others were established a long time ago. And second of all, ICE isn't a law enforcement agency. Well, that told me everything I needed to know. If you don't even know that they're a law enforcement agency and you're already saying, do not cooperate, we don't want law enforcement to cooperate with these individuals to keep our communities safe, that is reckless and obviously put our citizens at greater risk. I'm all about partnerships. Everybody post 9/11 in law enforcement knows we learned that we cannot work in silos. The FBI has to cooperate and communicate on an ongoing basis with the CIA, with our local law enforcement, with our state law enforcement. That's how you police and make sure you're doing the best possible job you can with the most resources. So yeah, that was very, very disappointing to me that the representative would do that and join in with some of these other elected officials. Where's the support? Where is the outrage and concern for the law-abiding citizens that he and all of us were elected to represent? Where is it? That's the priority. And to say that I'm going to defend or protect or give a protective bubble around people that aren't supposed to be here and help them not be identified, it's completely contrary to what our charge is for all of us who took the oath, that first and foremost, we would protect the people of this nation. And that's the fundamental responsibility of government. I won't apologize for it, and I won't walk away from my partners, in spite of what Representative Cabral and some of these other legislators up in Boston feel we ought to do. So I think that is about as extensive an answer as I can give you about Sorry.
You gave me a great answer. Now I have one more quick question. You're very familiar with the goings-on. You know how Beacon Hill works, how our legislatures work, and how they're influenced erroneously by lobbyists.
Yes.
And you're quite aware of the many trips and the packages that they get. I think Representative Cabral took a dozen trips in the last 2 years to Europe or St. Michael's, all paid for by these companies that lobbyists represent and get to him. Do you think he's a recipient, and pretty much all of them are, they're recipients of influence peddling. Am I correct?
Well, I wouldn't want to go that far and say that that's what's going on, because I don't know what trips people have taken. I've been on some of the trips to obviously to the Azores with some members of the legislature to deal with some legitimate issues around, crime and these partnerships around education and things like that, which really do help this area. But certainly, whenever any elected official takes a trip, it should be focusing on the issues that matter to the people here. I know I've been criticized for going to Washington, D.C., and I'm saying, wait a minute. If I was going to Washington, D.C. on an opioid issue or testifying before Congress, would these same people be critical of that are critical of me going there to testify about immigration? Because immigration, they look at it as sort of a national issue that doesn't affect us because we're not on the border. Every state is a border state now because of what's going on. So we have business to do that impacts us on a national level, and shame on us if we don't. But in those instances where it's not in the interest of the people who elected us, then I think people do obviously scrutinize those kinds of things. Caller, I got to jump off. I think we get some more calls. So, but I appreciate you calling in, and thanks for your input. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back with callers. Stay on the line, and we'll get right to you. We're back. This is Sheriff Tom Hodgson filling in for Barry Richards. We're going to have open lines for the next 3 hours, and we're going to talk about a lot of national issues. We're going to talk about local issues, and as I said, open lines. We'd love to hear from you, hear your thoughts, views, and have discussion around I think some of the most important issues that are facing us locally and nationally. Call in at 508-996-0500. That's 508-996-0500. Love to hear from you. Open lines for the next 3 hours. We're going to go to a caller right now. Hey, caller, you there?
Hi.
Hi, caller. How are you?
Oh, fine. And you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Okay. I called in last week, and I wasn't happy with the answer I got. It was on Chris McCarthy's show, and it kind of like, when I asked you the question, it was kind of like smoothed around real smooth and then just went out without an answer.
Okay.
So it's on the money from the opioid that you got, the grant there.
Yes.
And I would really like a breakdown of exactly what you're doing with the money for this opioid crisis that we have going on. I'm worried about local issues myself as a taxpayer, and I would really appreciate a breakdown. How could I get one of what you're doing with the money?
Well, we got the largest grant, as I had mentioned.
I know you said that before.
Yep, and I'm going to say it again, for the rest of the audience that might not have been on the air. The reason we got the largest grant was because we were focusing on our pretrial population, which wasn't being done anywhere else in the Commonwealth.
I know, but I want to know where the money's going to. This is what I mean. I don't want to go around all the things.
Even if they were only in for a short period of time and were released, didn't have a trial for months, that at least they'd walk out the door with the education around, number one, how do you avoid the opioid issue?
I know, but
what
that doesn't cost that amount of money, sir. And another thing is,
how do you deal with others who might be in your company that are having issues around opioid? So it's really primarily educational for the pretrial people to let them know these are the agencies that you should seek out if you.
Yeah, but that doesn't cost that amount of money. The agencies have their money, like PACA. They got allotted their money. You got allotted money for opioid.
Right.
Okay, I know everybody who got allotted what. So I would like a breakdown as a taxpayer. How can I get a breakdown of what you're doing with the money? Can you personally write it down or print it out?
Why don't you when we go to break, why don't you call back in and we'll take your call off the air and we'll get your address and we'll send you along what the criteria is for our grant. How's that?
I hope it answers the question, because I'd like to know where all this money's going to. And another thing I want to mention is that they're complaining about the food in the jail.
Sure.
Well, you have that nice diner sitting there that's rotting. Why don't you get that going and get the inmates in their cooking, and then they can make meals for the inmates, and then we can save taxpayers money from paying somebody that cooks in the prison.
Well, first of all, let me address the diner first. Nobody's more frustrated than we are that the diner has not been able to been upgraded to begin its services for the training programs that we're going to offer for inmates. That's a money issue. It needs a kitchen added onto it. It needs some other things, which we've been waiting for some monies that we have coming to us from the federal government on some seizures and things. So we haven't gotten that yet. It's been delayed for we don't know till when, but that was really what we were counting on, and it just hasn't been sent to us. Now, as far as saving taxpayers money, you're not going to find a sheriff's office in the Commonwealth that has a management accountability program like we do. We measure 250 indicators every single day, from how many meals are served, the medications given out, how many fire drills, and we measure it every day on every shift. We are probably, in fact, I just left our audit, our financial audit that was done by the state for the last 8 months. I just went to the closeout session, and they said that we have the tightest. I know that it was said that we had the tightest internal controls of any state agency in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
If I may interject for 1 minute, I was told that you pay somebody to get your rating.
But you mentioned about the inmates cooking the food and saving money. That's exactly what they do in our kitchen. They cook the food, working with our staff, our stewards, to not only cook the meals, but to get the meals out to the units. And complaining about the food, let me address that. We have an nutritionist that does our menus that I sign off twice a year for the meals. And the inmates that come in our facility leave healthier than when they came in, number one. We have dietary meals. We have heart health meals if somebody has to have a special meal. But the food we saw recently reported, and these are all sort of these groups that are pro illegal or feeling sorry for the inmates who are in there, saying when the inmates say to them, "Oh, we're not having, the food's old. We're getting food poisoning. They served us yellow potatoes." What the public doesn't know is those yellow potatoes, for example, my steward, the head steward, had put meat broth and some spices in there to make the mashed potatoes more flavorful. So it was doing something actually good for the inmates, and they attempted to try to turn it around and make the public believe they're not being treated properly. But here's the deal. You're not going to be able to get the same amount of food or the same amount of juice that you might want to have on the outside when you can make a choice for yourself. The taxpayers pay for this food, and they're cutting back on their costs to run the jails and and absorb the rising costs of prisons, not to mention the costs associated with being victimized. So here's the deal. If you don't like our meals and you don't like the portions, don't come there. But don't tell us that we're not meeting our federal standards. Don't tell us that we're not that we're not doing the proper things with regards to making sure that you're properly fed, because we do.
Okay, one other thing that I know you're under scrutiny right now, but
Sure.
I do know a girl that works for the coalition.
Yep.
And she has had a girlfriend who, and she's not a per se jailbird. I'll put it like that. I don't know if I can say that, but
It's too late now.
She works, and the thing is, she said the girl kept asking for help. Nobody helped her, and she passed out and died right in her plate. And your jail supposedly has the highest suicide rate.
Right.
Right. So there's something wrong there.
Well, we don't have the highest suicide rate. If you look at my 20 years, the average suicides in prisons per 100,000 people is 50 per 100,000. If you go over my 20 years, mine are 8 as opposed to 50 per 100,000. So what you're seeing these activist groups out there who are playing into these inmates, who are telling them things that just aren't true. We had a girl say that she went on just recently went on a starvation diet, and she was in segregation for 3 days. And on the third day, because she wasn't eating, the officer said, "We're going to strip you down. We're going to lay you on the floor, and we're going to force food down your throat." Out and out, blatant lie. But she put it out there, and people wrote about it. And the truth is, the girl did say she was going to go on a hunger strike. That day, she didn't eat her lunch. As is standard, when somebody says they're going to do that, we have to monitor them. So they're put in the special management unit, the segregation unit, and watched to see whether or not, for their welfare and their health, whether or not they're going to do this and continue doing it, because the medical needs to intercede. That particular girl, she didn't eat her lunch. She ate her dinner, and she was sent right back to the unit she was in the very next day. She was there for almost less than a day, and she continued to eat her meals in the unit she was originally in, and there was never any kind of an issue. But that's not what she told people. So anyway, caller, I want to get to some of the other callers. I appreciate you coming in, and I appreciate the opportunity to really lay out the truth, which is not something that we often see by some of these activist groups who are out there pushing for this. Caller, you're on the air.
Good afternoon, Sheriff.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you for calling in.
I want to thank you for your services. You're doing a good job as Sheriff.
Well, I appreciate that. You've got a great staff.
You know, what is the crime is these employers who are hiring these illegals? They know they're hiring them, but they're laughing all the way to the bank. They're using these poor immigrants, and they're not fair to American citizens, these employers. I'll call them what they are. They're just dirty, greedy scumbags. And our representative, our so-called Representative Cabral, he knows it. This place down the south end, what was it, the Bianco place?
A Bianco factory, yep.
Yeah, he knew that was going on.
Yep.
And they let it happen. And election time, they come around to the public and say what they're doing for the American citizens, how much they care for them.
Yeah, that's that. You know what? Look, that's. I think that's the sort of hypocrisy that you see right down there in Washington D.C. that goes on and on and on. There were members of the federal delegation who knew that raid was going to happen at Bianca, because I know that ICE had been in touch with some of our delegation. And some of them came up here when that raid happened right afterwards and said, "Oh, these poor people, ICE isn't being fair to these individuals. They're ripping kids away from their families," and on, which was so hypocritical. I couldn't believe it. But yet, if you just sort of listen to them, it was like, "Oh, we can't believe that the government's doing this." And here's the really important point that you're raising, and that is, look, businesses, you owe it. You're here in America. You have the opportunity to take advantage of making profits and writing your own ticket, building a business, but you don't have a right to violate the law and allow people that you know are here illegally, or encourage people to come here illegally because you're not following the rules. So you're as guilty as the people who are coming here illegally, and even more so because you know the rules and you're creating a magnet for them to want to come. So this now leads to the issue of Congress. The issue of E-Verify, we've been asking for this in law enforcement, for E-Verify, which is a program that every company would have to follow, where you would have to verify through email. You would have to comply with the federal government's rules that you have to verify every person that works for you is legal, and you would be required to do that. But Congress yet fails to do anything with this. This is a simple thing for them to pass, and yet they continue to allow it to go on. And yes, you're right. Look, the Braga Bridge, when it got painted, they came up with 7 people who were operating under the same Social Security number who were illegal.
My God.
I'm told that the Immigration Naturalization building in Providence, it was built several years ago, was built mostly by illegals. So, yes. Illegal workers. But you know what? You can't just blame them. You have to blame the businesses for doing this. And the last thing I would say is it's really important. Say some big contractor, builder down in Texas is bidding on a hospital that needs to be built in this area in Bristol County. So that person puts their bid in, but they have somebody what they call a jefe. And a jefe is somebody that knows the illegal community, and say it's somebody that knows the drywall work. So this particular owner knows this jefe up in Massachusetts and says, hey, listen, can you get me, 20 people so I can bid on doing the drywall for this hospital that's going to be built? Knowing that you're not going to pay for the insurance for them, you're basically going to be paying them under the table less than the union wages. And you're going to be able to undercut the legitimate businesses in America who are bidding on that because you're not paying the things that you should be paying and using illegal workers. And this is going on all over the country. Yeah. And it's unfair to the legitimate businesses who are following the rules. And this goes to the whole bigger question, even on the pro-illegal people. Look, we have laws, and we're not going to make excuses for the people that violate them. We're going to reward and encourage people that follow the laws and give them the best opportunity in America that they have a right to have by doing the right thing. And this idea of these activist groups saying, no, well, we should just pretend and look the other way when somebody violates the law. After all, they just came in here. Well, and they didn't really do anything wrong. Really? Yes, they did. They came in here illegally. They could have done what the other people, the hundreds and millions of people over the years have done, which is wait their turn, respect the laws of the United States, and follow through the system. But when you don't get your way and you don't like the way the system is, you can't just say, well, too bad, I'm going to violate the law. And that's what's going on, and that's what's been going on with some of these businesses that are undercutting legitimate businesses and the American worker, and it's not right.
Well, the only way we're going to change it is at the polls.
You know what? And that's the thing that has to happen in this country. We as a nation need to come together, because I believe most of us, I don't care what party you're in, most of us believe in fairness. We believe in right and wrong. And while everybody might not speak out about it, we need to, because the people in Washington will never, ever change. They've been doing this for 20 years, going along the same blueprint. They argue back and forth over politics and not public policy and making a difference. So we're gonna go to a break. Caller, thanks for calling in and thanks for the great questions. We're gonna go to break and we'll be back in just a moment. We'll take more of your calls. Good afternoon, everybody. Sheriff Tom Hodgson filling in for Barry Richards, who's out, I think, having some restful time somewhere on a beach somewhere. But I'm happy to be here and filling in for Barry. We're going to have open phones for the next 3 hours, and call in at 508-996-0500, 508-996-0500. We take a couple calls before we go to break. Caller, you there?
Are you sure you want this call? Sheriff Hotshot Hodgson, you sure you want this call from Rochester? Think
Well, is there something wrong with Rochester?
No, not at all.
Okay.
What an honor, sir.
Well, is there
I'm
honors
going
all
to tell
mine?
you what. Those inmates.
Yes, sir. Ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, I'm sorry.
Well, dirty dumb. If they came here and ate, they'd crawl back to your place and they would do the Harlem Shuffle to get back in jail. If they ate here at my place.
Oh, really?
What do you think of that one?
Well, I think that if they're going to protest food anywhere, they ought to be protesting out in Rochester, not in my prison.
I'm saying they'd want your food more than mine.
You're probably a better cook than that. Come on.
That's about it.
You're probably a good cook. I don't believe
I am a great cook. I've got 95 in the sun.
Yeah.
And about 85 in the shade.
Yeah. Well, thanks, caller. Thanks for calling in. It's great to hear from you. Caller, you there?
Hey, Sheriff. Good day to you.
Good day to you.
I want to commend you, man, for your patience, Sheriff. This is Cousin Dave. We talked a couple times. I've been to your office and sat with you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, you know, I was blessed to get my mother's patience. She was eternally patient. So
absolutely. I'll tell you, I started working on the waterfront back in 1991. One of my first positions of employment was down there on that waterfront, and it wasn't so hard for me to get a job because I was connected down there. My father's a scholar boat captain and has been for 38 years. Wow. So it wasn't hard for me to get a position. That's a tough job. God bless them and all the fishing out there. Definitely. But I'll tell you, for people who are not connected and who were not connected even back then, it was hard for them to get any type of employment down there because, as we know, it was just full of illegals. And I think it still is. And the way it works, I worked for a roofing company out of Westport, and one of the guys on my crew was here illegally. But what he ended up doing was he obtained someone's social security number and he paid for it. He paid for someone's information. Mm-hmm. And his plan was to work here for 5 years, and he was working government rate. I'm talking between $40 and $60 an hour, okay? Wow. And this man worked here for 5 years, and he sent all his money back to Honduras. Uh-huh. And within those 5 years of him working here, he went back, and he never has to work another day in his life because of the money that he sent back. He left his wife there with 6 kids and was here for 5 years by himself doing this. So I commend you for your patience because I understand that it's going to be a hard thing to stop because if people are buying social security numbers from someone, it's how do you know that they're here illegally or not if they show you a piece of paper that has their face with numbers on it and stuff. It's
well, you know what, caller, Cousin Dave, I will tell you, you've raised two very important points. One of which is, look, I don't think any of us begrudge someone who wants to get ahead in life and earn an opportunity to raise their stature and standard in life economically and otherwise. That we all get that, but we can't allow people to jump in front of others who are waiting their turn, following the laws, respecting the rules, and say it's okay. Because then, what do you say to the ones that are continuing to follow the law? Don't bother anymore.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're right.
You can't have people standing on the USS Massachusetts on 4th of July at a swearing-in ceremony to get their citizenship at their probably one of their most proudest moments in life.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And have them thinking for even a fleeting moment as they're raising their hand, they're going, what am I, an idiot? I went through all this, waited my turn, did all this. I should have just snuck in here and not bothered with this. You see, that's not what we're about in America. And that's not how America got where it is. That's not what brought us to greatness. What brought us to greatness is people respected the laws. They knew that our system was in place to control our growth so that the honest, hardworking people and those who immigrated legally would be first given the opportunity they were seeking out, and not when they got here all of a sudden told, well, wait a minute, no, your kids can't any longer have after-school programs because we have too many people now who've come here illegally that we now have to support through Medicare, through welfare, through housing, and all these other things. And why should it be that, look, I get that the guy wanted to get ahead, but the reality is, while everybody else is waiting their turn and not getting the opportunity because they're doing the right thing, that has to be what we support. And so you raise a very, very important point about that. And we can't continue to go this road where we have even elected officials going, you know what, there needs to be a special class of people. If they get in here and they sneak in illegally, then you know what, we need to put a protective bubble around them and make sure that nobody can really necessarily identify that they're here illegally, and do the best we can to prevent that from happening. We're not in the business of protecting lawbreakers. We're in the business of protecting people who do things lawfully and giving them every opportunity that they deserve for doing things the right way. And the laws of this country protect the republic and protect the way of life here in the United States, so that all of us can have a good quality of life and have the opportunities that our forefathers expected us to have, to get ahead in a free world.
Absolutely. I started feeling differently about the immigration game once I got hurt myself, and I had to run through the system and really find out how it is that those of us who are the system and gone through it and paid a lot of money into insurances and disabilities and a whole bunch of different things. I mean, when I was working, I used to make between $90,000 and $150,000 a year, and I did that for over a decade. So I put a lot of money into our system.
Sure.
And when I got told by our system that I wasn't going to get any money through disability, even though I had 4 of my doctors and 2 of their doctors telling them why I couldn't work, I was dumbfounded. I couldn't believe that someone who's coming here from another country can eat. I can eat and have shopping carriages full of food and clothes and have rent paid and heat and electricity and just have everything handed to them. And here I am. I've been paying into the system for over a decade, well over a decade.
Yeah, and what about, and think about this, and you raised that's a great example. What about the senior citizens today who raised their children, supported their churches, their civic organizations, did all the right things, and now they have to be in public housing for seniors, and one of them, say, passes away, right? So now this one widow or widower is still needing services because they can't afford to live in their home anymore or whatever, and they're told, oh, no problem, you qualify. You've been paying it all your life, and yeah, you've done all the right things, but you're going to have to wait on a waiting list for 2.5 years because 20 or 25% of the people that are in public housing right now are here illegally, and they're occupying your space. I gotta go now and go to break. We have to pay the bills, so we'll be back. And thanks for calling in, caller. No, I don't sound like Barry Richard. This is Sheriff Tom Hodgson filling in for Barry for the next 2 hours. We've had a lively first hour, and we'll be looking forward to the next 2 hours to hear from all of you. And we're just about ready to go to the top of the hour for the news, but we're going to have a pretty exciting topic coming up in the next hour, and I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you and get your thoughts and ideas and input on it. So we'll look for you after the top of the hour in the news. Hang in there. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Listeners out there, this is Sheriff Tom Hodgson filling in for Barry Richards. We're going into our second hour, and I'll be here till 3. Like it or not, that's the time frame, and I'm going to be here on the air for that period of time, giving you all an opportunity to call in, give us your thoughts, ideas about whatever's on your mind. But importantly, we're talking a lot about the issues of immigration. Before I get to the next topic, I'm just going to take this caller, and I want to go into a topic that I think is timely. It's something that we just realized has been written in the Standard Times about an event tonight that I really want to hear your thoughts and also give you some thoughts about it from my perspective. Caller, you're on the air. Thank you for holding. You there, caller?
Hello?
Hello, caller. You there?
Yes, I am. I want to talk to the sheriff.
Well, you are. And thank you.
Great.
Thank you for hanging in there. I know it was a little bit of a
I've been hanging in there because I love you to death.
Oh, yes.
And you are doing so much good for this community. And when are they going to realize what they're doing? The Democrats and this dumb New Bedford and the dumb Standard Times are so misleading to people. Why do those prisoners deserve better than half of the city of New Bedford is getting? Why do they have to be in air-conditioned and good food? You think all of New Bedford's in air-conditioned and good food?
Well, caller, yeah, I mean, I hear your frustration. I would tell you that...
Frustration with this Standard Times and this New Bedford and this mayor?
Well...
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, you know...
You stand out in this community.
Well, yeah, I suppose it depends on the perspective of the person looking as to whether or not that's good or bad. But what I would tell you is I share your frustration sometimes, and I know a lot of the listeners out there feel the same way, that they would prefer to have the honest truth about what's really going on and not have it spun and sort of, playing into this agenda or that agenda, which unfortunately seems to be the way of the world today, and particularly around the issues that we're dealing with right now that you've probably read about in the papers on the conditions of our facilities, cleanliness, and all of these other things.
The Democrats are trying to make this a welfare country, just like Obama tried. Thank God Trump got him out. They're trying to make it a welfare country. Massachusetts is a welfare state.
Well, you know what? There is clearly a socialist progressive movement out there that's trying to. We see it up at the legislature right now, going on with this growing group up there that's trying to give more rights to the people who have violated the law, those criminally illegal aliens who are here, versus the people who are the victims. And my question is, where the hell are these elected officials when it comes to taking care of these victims? You don't hear them, looking for ways and being outspoken on a regular basis about how many angel moms and dads there are out there who you want to talk about separation of kids. How about these moms and dads who will never share another birthday, will never see their daughter or their son get married and have grandchildren because of criminally illegal aliens that have either been come into this country, been picked up, deported, come back, and you've got these elected officials saying, well, you know what, it's hands off. We should be a sanctuary state or a sanctuary city, and these people should have a right to be here. Look, this is, you don't know when they say, well, it's not the people that have committed the crimes, these other people that haven't committed crimes. Really? Well, the Zarnaev brothers didn't commit the Boston Marathon bombing as soon as they walked into this country. They did it later. And the problem is those of us in law enforcement understand that there are people out there that maybe they haven't committed a crime yet, but when they murder some innocent person and take some child from some family, it's a little late to say, well, we didn't know they were going to do it, or that's just one of many who've come here. Many of them haven't done it. I've heard people say, hey, there are more crimes committed by American citizens than there are by these people who have illegally entered the country. Really? Well, are we supposed to celebrate that? That's like saying we should be celebrating the fact that the 18th Street gang, it's a vicious gang, commits less murders than MS-13. It's ridiculous. Exactly. Why would we want to celebrate the fact that some group commits less crime? If these illegal criminals didn't come into this country, the criminally illegal aliens, and commit these crimes, we wouldn't have these victims. The crimes would never have happened. So it's a bogus argument. It's the same pro-illegal arguments that go on. And it is what you said, caller. This is a progressive movement to try to bring us closer to socialism. And I would challenge all the listeners out there.
Exactly.
I would challenge the listeners out there to Google the socialist platform and look under law and order, because it's broken down under law and order and other benefits, in society. Look under law and order and see if you don't see the blueprint of Senator Eldridge out of Boston and some of these other progressives up there, the Michelle Dubois out of Brockton and people like that, and see if you don't see exactly what the blueprint is that they're trying to push under this socialist movement.
Exactly. The writing's on the wall.
It's there. And the American people need to be educated about it. And that's why I think, guys like Chris McCarthy, Barry Richards, and all the other radio talk show hosts. Great. They're out there educating the public. And look, I've said this many times. Radio is probably the best way to get the message out to the people and educate them. People can still make up their own minds, but at least give them the honest, balanced facts about what's going on. And caller, you've been very, I think, on point. And it's great that you called in, because what you're saying, I think most people feel, and they're tired.
You understand that Standard Times publishes that rag every day, and all of it is detrimental to our president. They're doing such a disservice to this area.
Yeah, I never have a problem with the opposing views of the press, and even if it isn't balanced or unfair, because I think it gives, once those things happen, it gives people like myself an opportunity to talk about what is the truth, and then the public can decide. But yeah, there is definitely some unfairness out there in the media world, but there is free press. There is sort of the First Amendment rights that people have. As long as we all have the opportunity to have some rebuttal and the public gets a chance to hear the other side, I think it works out in the end for all of us. Caller, thanks for calling in, and I think we got another caller. Let's go to another caller, and then I'll get on to the other topic.
I agree with everything that lady just said, and I think you're doing a wonderful job. Matter of fact, I wish you were the governor.
Well, I got my hands full on this job, but I do think that, and thank you for that, caller. I would tell you, some people ask me, they speculated I was going to Washington to work for the Trump administration and on and on. And people have asked me different things at different times about running for Congress. And I said, listen, in this job, it's a job that you can be close to the people. You can understand what are the real issues going on in the communities and not lost in the national debate. And use your position to try to influence national policy. Use your position to improve the quality of life in your communities. And that's why sheriffs across this country are mobilizing. They're saying, look, we're elected by the people. We don't play Democrat, Republican politics. We're more interested, how do we maintain the quality of life, uphold the Constitution as constitutional officers, and make sure that the people know that there is one elected office that they can count on across the United States, and that's the office of the sheriff. And you're going to see in September, there's going to be a pretty large number of sheriffs that are going to be in Washington, D.C., and we're going to be going up to Capitol Hill, and the people across this country are going to hear about it, because
I'm going to have to let you go.
Well, caller, thanks for calling in. We have another caller? One more caller. We're going to go to next caller. Hey, caller, you there?
Yes, I am.
Thank you for calling in.
You're welcome. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I want to say this in all candidness, and I'm genuine about it. I realize that you must have your agenda to some extent, as any human would. But I think overall, I view you as a voice of reason and a sea of absurdity that's going on these days. And I want to thank you for doing what you do. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that, caller. I appreciate it. I'm blessed to be working with probably one of the best correctional staffs in the nation, and I can't tell you that we were there when I first took over, but I have, and I'm not saying it in a biased way, because I've compared us to our national accreditations and all the things that are going on, and we are where we are, and that's why I get so upset when people misrepresent the truth about what's really happening and what our staff have really accomplished and what all of our accreditations say, just to advance their own ideology or political platforms, or just because they just are who they are and that's how they operate. But but the truth has to matter, and that's why I won't stand by and allow people to malign the great work of our organization. And that leads me to something that I said I was going to talk about at the top of the hour, which is we just saw an article that was recently written in the Standard Times today, announcing that there will be at the suggestion of, and I'm sure most of the listeners out there know her, Marlene Pollock, surprise, surprise, who is calling for a rally up at the New England School of Law right across from our Dartmouth complex, or just down the street, to protest, get this, to protest the quality of food that we serve to inmates in our operation. And I really want you to listen to what I'm about to say. This woman is organizing people to go up and protest something she's never looked into. She couldn't tell you what's on the menu today or was on the menu 20 years ago or 2 weeks ago. You know why? She doesn't want to know. She doesn't want to know whether or not we're serving quality food, whether or not we're meeting the federal standards, which we are. We meet the FDA standards of the industry. We have a nutritionist that puts our menus together that I sign off every 6 months. She doesn't want to know that. You know why? It doesn't fit her agenda. She wants to create this propaganda campaign to try to rally people up. But let me tell you what the problem with this is. People like Marlene Pollock and these others who don't want to know the truth but want to use this propaganda and lies to advance their ideology or be pro-inmate or whatever they want to, whatever they're trying to do, they're putting the inmates and our officers at risk. When you start creating a platform that inmates can jump behind just to try to get notoriety, you can cause a disturbance inside a penal institution in a matter of seconds. Because that's what's happened with the food, this whole food thing, that when the detainees said that they were going to go on a starvation thing 2 days later, then some of the local inmates decided, well, we're going to support those people. And you know what? Sadly, the detainees that were spewing all this nonsense, they're saying that they're not being properly fed, they don't get medical care. We have a nurse that's in the facility every single day, right? They get full medical treatment. All the things they were putting out there was also part of what they see on national TV. They think, oh, we can raise some hell about the get rid of the ICE operation and all these things. And then you get the local inmates jumping on and suddenly you got a big, big problem. And I would love for Marlene Pollock to call in. I don't think she will. Marlene Pollock always hides in the shadows at the back of groups and whispers in people's ears of what to say because she won't call in and she won't tell us, what are you talking about? Get on the phone, Marlene. Call in and tell us what inferior food is there. You've never walked in our place. You've never asked me a question or anyone else in our facility what we serve. We meet all the national accreditations. We are amongst the best correctional facilities in the nation. But Marlene Pollock doesn't want to hear that. Neither do her friends. They want to go up there and make you believe something's wrong. So, Marlene, call in if you can, and let's hear it specifically from you or some of your friends about specifically what are you talking about. So, we're gonna hope that happens. We're gonna go to break right now, and want to pay some more bills. And looking forward to hearing from Marlene or anyone else that wants to call in. 996-0500, 508-996-0500. Go to break. We'll be back in your calls in just a moment. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Sheriff Tom Hodgson filling in for Barry Richards, who's taking, I'm sure, a well-deserved day off. We're going to be, I'm going to be with you till 3 o'clock, like it or not. But no, we've been having a great show so far with a lot of people calling in, giving their thoughts and perspectives around, actually, most recently about the local issues. About we were just before we went to break, we were talking about Marlene Pollock and some of her movement group, the progressives around this area, going up to the law school later this afternoon or early evening to protest the food that's being served at the prison, which I had said just before break is pretty ironic, since she has no clue what we serve at the prison. She's using this to advance her ideology and actually, unfortunately, put our officers and the inmates that we have care and custody for at risk by encouraging inmates to rally around something that's not so, and suggesting that they have this big following out there, that somehow they're being mistreated. And I think that's very sad and unfortunate. I have no problem if it's a legitimate complaint, but Marlene Pollock's never even picked up the phone to call me to say, hey, listen, so a couple of inmates said this. Is this true? I invite Marlene Pollock, come to our place, look at we're having the Standard Times come out, I think, beginning of this week, take pictures of our food, take a look at what we serve. We're very, very proud of how we have treated our inmates and the fact that we give them nutritional meals. No, you're not going to come to our place, and I'm not going to give you French fries, and you're not going to get all the extras that you would get if you make good choices and live outside our prison walls. That's what being a good citizen is all about. But the taxpayers are paying for the food there. We're going to give, as I said, the inmates the proper care, the proper food, the proper nutrition, has been cited time and time again over my 20 years by our inspections. So I'd love for Marlene to call in and give us specifics about what exactly in the meals is the problem. What information does she have? Where did she get it from? And why she would not want to know the truth and instead use the false comments made by apparently one or more inmates to try to drive a ideology of a socialist sort of position around prisons and what we're doing. So anyway, I'm going to go to the calls right now. We got a lot of callers, and I want to give everybody an opportunity to pipe in on whatever their perspectives are. Caller, you there?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, caller. Thanks for calling in.
I guess Ms. Pollock, doesn't realize that all meats and so forth, they come in stamped USDA.
Right.
Okay. Other than that, the only other thing before I get serious is I didn't know Tony Cabral had so much influence on the legislature that they passed the laws the way he wants them.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure that's the case, but certainly when we hear the public objections by Representative Cabral and other more
I have
people.
two questions.
Sure.
One is approximately how much does it cost per inmate today to house them at the House of Correction? That's the first question.
Well,
per year.
Per year. Okay. So Bristol County has the lowest cost and has for almost 20 years the lowest cost per inmate in the Commonwealth. And we are at, I think, somewhere close to 28 or 30,000 per year. And we're one of the lowest. If you can get up to, some facilities are up close to $100 per day per inmate. But we have as I said, for 20 years, I started the Management Accountability Program. We measure every day on every shift 250 operating indicators, from meals served, overtime, family medical leave, fire drills. And in the first year of this program, my management team, just the kitchen alone, they reduced their costs by paying attention to the detail and the taxpayers' money by $350,000 in their first year. And my staff, every year, that's what they understand, that's the priority. Look for ways to be more efficient, cut the taxpayers' costs, give them more return on their investment. And that's what they do, and that's why we're where we are.
That sounds great. My other question is, with all good comes some bad.
Sure.
And even though you're doing a great job, how much in these 20 years or so that you've been there, what is the percentage of employees that have been complained about that you have found to be actually guilty of what they're being complained about?
Well,
it is a bureaucracy, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's hard to
have good and have bad.
It's hard to give a percentage over the course of the years, because we haven't really measured it by percentage. I will tell you this much: our staff, they understand accountability. It's what we're about. It's the sort of the framework upon which we launch. I have a saying that we put up when we built our management accountability room where we do our meetings that says the price of greatness is accountability. And over the course of my 20 years, and you know, early on we had a lot of work to do, but once we launched, and as we launched this program, our staff understood that, yeah, you're accountable for how you treat the inmates, you're accountable for how you use your time in relation to the fact that taxpayers are paying for it, and on and on and on. And so I would tell you that it's hard to give you a percentage, but we don't have a high percentage of people that have problems because our management team are on top of it, and we hire good staff. We are able to go through interview processes that I'm not part of, and they're interviewed by managers that are going to be dealing with them. So I can't give you a percentage, unfortunately, but I can tell you it's not a high percentage. Caller, we're gonna go to our next caller. You there, caller? Hi, caller. You on the air? Caller, you there? Caller? All right, we got to go to the next caller. Hopefully the person that was waiting there will call back in. Caller, you there?
Good afternoon, Sheriff Tom.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm so glad to hear you on the radio. Marlene Pollock. I can bet her sidekick in this deal is Dana Rivero, Counselor of Ward 4.
Well, I know the counselors weighed in on the some of the things that have come up of recent, and certainly has a very different philosophical view than I do on the care and custody of prisoners and probably a lot of other issues, public issues, but which is okay. That's what makes the world go round.
That girl, I tell you, she should pay attention to Ward 4. I've lived in Ward 4 for 40 years, and I'll tell you, we've got the dirtiest ward I have ever seen. We never see her. She never takes care of anything. I have no idea where that girl goes or what she does, but the only time I hear her getting into something is when something like this comes up.
Well, what I would say to you, caller, you raised the issue about the ward being clean for sure. Look, I represent you as well. If you need us to come in and clean up that area in your neighborhood, we have inmates out every day who go out and work in the communities, painting hydrants, cleaning up streets and what have you, painting curbing, even building a handicapped accessible treehouse out at the IDDI school. So if you have something that you think that I believe that taxpayers ought to be able to get a return on the investment for what they're paying into government. And so where we can, and I've said it from day one, we need to make sure we use every resource we have within our operation at the sheriff's office to give back some benefits to the people, and that's one of them that we can do. So if you have any issues, call me and let me know.
I'm going to do just that. I have a friend that lives in 15 minutes away, Fall River.
Yep.
And we were walking every morning, and I live maybe 5 streets from Kempton Street, in and around that area, Kempton, Mill, North. And we were getting to Mettville Street, and she said, "Oh, my God, look at these." And, I didn't actually realize it before until she said it. She said, "Look at your gutters. Look at these streets."
Well,
and I said,
Yeah, and Colin, but what in addition to getting the streets clean, I have to tell you, when you don't have your streets cleaned, it becomes a magnet for people who want to deal drugs and do other things that are illicit activity, because they believe that those are the areas where people aren't paying attention. So send me a letter. Tell me what the area is. We work closely with the mayor. Mayor Mitchell, he's been very good about trying to do what he can.
I love him. He's wonderful.
He does a great job. And so we're happy to come in and help out anywhere we can. And so send me a letter. Let me know what the issues are, and I'll get it over to our work crew program coordinator, and we'll help you out.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks for calling in, caller. Caller, you there?
Yes.
And so am I.
Hello.
Hi, caller. How are you? It's Sheriff
I
Hodgson.
wanted, you told me to go off here to get some information, but I don't know what you want me to do.
Okay, I wasn't aware. I'm not running the board, but we will get you that information if you get us your address off the air. All right, caller, you there?
Yeah, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. As far as Marlene Pollock, I used to watch her on school committees, and she wasn't great at all. She didn't do nothing for the kids. Okay, so I don't know why she wants to start all kinds of baloney. But also, I delivered Wonder Bread for 30 years.
Good bread, I got to tell you. One of my favorites, nice and soft.
I used to deliver at the Ash Street Jail, and I used to deliver at the Barnstable down in Hyannis.
Oh, wow.
And they got all fresh bread, in case all these people had to listen. They got all fresh bread, all fresh English muffins, and all fresh donuts all the years that I was there.
Yeah.
So
and you know,
they didn't starve, that's for sure.
Right. And caller, you know, I think you know this, and probably the listeners do. It would be absolutely, totally irresponsible for us. Everybody knows in a prison that food's important.
Exactly.
The last thing you want to do is create a problem over food, because you will create an environmental problem that can get people hurt. So
exactly.
I've been doing this. Look, does it make any sense to any listeners out there?
You've been doing a great job.
Well, thank you, caller. I've been doing this for 20 years.
Yeah, right.
Suddenly
right,
our
exactly.
food's bad? Are you serious?
Yeah.
I mean, nobody believes that.
Of course.
You know, these are activist groups like the Marlene Pollock's groups and these others who we've seen protest before about this, that, and the other thing. I mean, I know that, for example, Marlene Pollock was a professor, maybe she still is at BCC.
Right.
And she was telling her class, if you go up and protest against the sheriff and write a paper on it, I'll give you extra credit.
Yeah,
I mean, this is the kind of nonsense that's going on, that's using government or using, sadly, this propaganda to advance their personal political socialist agendas, which are not in the interest of the American people or the people of this county. And we are going to expose it every time it happens. And frankly, the fact that these individuals who are doing this, you never hear from them on the air because they don't want to hear the truth.
Exactly.
And they don't want to be confronted about the truth. But you know what? Every chance we get, we're going to make sure that the people that we answer to, all of us in my office, who pay our salaries, we're going to make sure that they understand exactly what's going on. We're an open book, and they need to, you know, hear the other side of it, and we're going to make sure that happens.
Keep up the good work.
Thanks, caller.
All right.
Caller, you there? Oh, no caller. Okay, well, look, this is and this is not pick on Marlene Pollock Day. This is just sort of evolved out of an article we just saw about another sort of a misguided protest that we're hearing. I think most of you know about the issue, or read about the issue with the Attorney General, where a lot of this started. Maura Healey had sent a letter to the Secretary of Public Safety asking that they look into investigating our department based on, she said, 2 news reports from 2 liberal sources. One was the Boston Globe, and another was from New England Investigative Reporters or something, which are well known for their sort of more liberal positions. And also cited that she had received a couple of complaints at her Civil Rights Division. Well, to the credit of the Standard Times, I understand that they filed FOIA complaints. When they called the Attorney General's office, they said, well, who filed the complaints? What were they about? They wouldn't tell them. So they filed a FOIA request, Freedom of Information, and got the chart, what was alleged, and also who signed it. And what was amazing to me, not surprising, that people that signed, well, first of all, the 2 letters that she claimed were her motivation for doing this were almost identical, sent at separate times. One of them, believe it or not, ironically, was date stamped, received in the Attorney General's office. Catch this. Now, if it's true, I got to find out who this person is, so I'll hire him. Received Christmas Day, 2017. Really? But at any rate, the people that signed onto these letters were 8 activist organizations that we're very familiar with. And so was the Attorney General. And the people that signed from those organizations are people from here. You know, one of them was the National Committee woman for the Democrat Party. Another was the chairwoman for the Marion Democrat Party, and on and on and on. But I've got a caller on the air, and I really want to hear more from the people than for me to be spouting on because what you have to say is important. So, caller, are you there?
Yeah. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And it's interesting to hear you on the radio, so that's good. And
this isn't my first rodeo on the radio, just so you know.
It's your first rodeo?
No, it's not. It's not. I'm joking with you.
Well, not bad then, and thank you for disclosing that.
Yeah.
I'm just being a wise guy.
Yeah, me too.
You know, we're seeing the same thing on the national level, and I really have my concerns about our Attorney General in the national, in the federal government, because why are the conservatives or independent-minded conservatives or people who just want to, really work for a living and do things right and get through the minutia, we're constantly attacked, but nobody is going after the left like Maxine Waters, where they incite violence, and some of the other ones. And our Attorney General just seems to stay silent. So we really need a little bit of pushing back legally, not with fisticuffs or anything. And
sure.
I'm really sad that we're not seeing that pushback, because that doesn't help you. That doesn't help President Trump. That doesn't help anybody else. And it seems like the media is so much in the tank, and they promote so much negative press against anybody who dares speak against the left, that it just seems definitely one-sided. And I think, what do you think about our Attorney General? I mean,
well,
it would be nice to see him a little bit more aggressive with some of these issues, don't you think?
Well, let me tell you. I'm glad you asked that question. I know Jeff Sessions very, very well. I've known him for many years and worked with him for many years, going back when I started working on immigration reform 20 years ago. And I have to tell you, he is the one person in Congress that never wavered, is a man of impeccable integrity. And I think sometimes when you push that integrity up against the swamp in Washington, where they are so used to parsing their words and saying things people want to hear, that you're a bit of an anomaly. But I will tell you, I know him to be a very honest man. I think, obviously, him recusing himself around this whole Russian probe and all of these other things, that he did it as an honest man who wanted to make sure there was no suggestion of impropriety or conflict of interest. And that's the kind of guy he is. He's always been that way. And so maybe others would feel that he shouldn't have done that, and perhaps they're right. But I would tell you, it would not have been for any other reason but for the fact that he is a very, very honest person who wants to make sure everything looks and is very clean. And so I think he is, though. He was just here in Boston yesterday. In fact, we called down to his staff to let him know that if he had the time, I'd want to meet with him, because he was up here to deal with what we know in our prison. We've already started to deal with the number of imposters with fraudulent IDs. It's a huge, huge problem across the nation, and I'm encouraging sheriffs throughout the United States to assign somebody like we have full-time to identifying the imposters inside our prisons, because there are thousands and thousands of them, and they're being released back on the street, and people are going out there under fraudulent IDs committing more and more crimes. And
I understand that. Not to cut you off, but
sure, no, go ahead.
In the conversation, I understand that, but maybe all right, so let's not question his integrity. Let's just say, or could you maybe agree that in these unprecedented times, he's not the man this time, because these are very turmoil times. And I just see somebody like
Trey Gowdy,
like Trey Gowdy,
yeah,
any of those guys might, because if you don't push back, they're going to keep pushing, and it's kind of like we saw with
bullying the bully, right?
Obama.
You got to bully the bully.
Well, you got to put your foot down. We
right.
saw what the international community did with Barack Obama when he wanted to be a pacifist, and now we're seeing a whole different change with the international community now that President Trump is putting his foot down. So I'm not saying that he's a bad man.
Right, I understand. I understand, Caller. You'd like to see him be more aggressive.
A bit more aggressive,
yep.
And I think it's really hurting everybody's cause, because we need a more aggressive person in
well,
there. And
you know what, Colin? It's a fair. I think it's a fair point you make, and I'm hopeful that maybe as this thing is evolving, you're going to see him do that. I got to go to break right now because we've got to pay the bills. But I appreciate you calling in. A great perspective, and we'll come back to callers in just a few minutes. Thanks so much for calling. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Bristol County Sheriff Tom Hodgson. I'm filling in for Barry Richards. It's been a great, almost a full 2 hours, but we still got one more hour to go after this, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you. I hope that you'll take advantage of the opportunity to call in. I talked early on in the show about the importance of trying to get our country back to this sort of civil debate where we can have differing points of view, and not demonize people, but point out the differences in perspectives, and where people are coming from and how they go about doing it, but doing it hopefully in the future in a civil sort of way. It doesn't have to be name calling. It can be being very direct and being out there. But let's try to do everything we can to have good dialogue, get the information out, and ultimately let the public who's listening to decide what the truth is or where they stand. So please take the time to call in, give us your thoughts, ideas on the topics that are being discussed. Call at 508-996-0500, 508-996-0500. We got a caller on the line right now, and we're going to go right to the caller. Caller, you there?
Yeah, hello, Sheriff. How you doing today?
Hi, caller. How are you?
Yeah, I get the utmost respect for you and the job that you do, and I hate it when you get stepped on in the newspaper.
What? Yeah.
And what I'm about to say, I've never been more serious in all my life. It's not a joke. I'm not a wise guy. But let me say this. Somebody comes out of jail after 5 months or 5 years or 15 years, makes no difference. He comes out, he doesn't owe anybody a dime. Right?
Right.
Okay. Our reward for being loyal to the laws of this country, we're not wise guys. We don't break the law. We have the utmost respect for the law. We don't go to jail. Our reward is we pick up the tab for these guys.
Right.
How did that system ever get started?
Well, that's
somebody explain that to me, please.
Yeah, that's the great question. But I would tell you that for a number of people who go to prison, many of them never got probably the guidance that maybe the rest of us got about right and wrong and so forth and so on. Some might have been sitting on a stoop on some neighborhood street at 11 o'clock at night while their parent was pushing drugs up and down the street in the carriage that they should have been in. So they didn't get a great start and a great jump along the way. But when they, for whatever reasons, they made the bad choices and came to jail, our role is not to just sort of have them sit back, watch TV, play cards, lift weights. And I know I was criticized when I first took over as the sheriff and did those things. And he's Till of the Hun, he hates prisoners and all of that. But the truth of the matter is, regardless of how that person did or didn't get guidance along the way in life and made a bad choice, when they come to prison, we should, like any other government agency, if we have to provide a service, make sure it matters. And so when they come there, if any of us, all the listeners out there, if we had a choice, say we made a bad decision, went to jail, and the sheriff says, hey, look, you can sit back, watch TV, play cards, hang out, smoke cigarettes, and don't worry about who's paying for your food, who's paying for anything else. You got a free ride here. As long as you're quiet, we're good. Or you can go to a program like a substance abuse program or a religious retreat program like the one I started when I took over, or get your GED, or deal with anger management, whatever it is. We're going to say, I'm going to go to that closet and go in that dark closet and deal with these difficult issues in my life rather than watch TV, play cards, lift weights. No way I'm doing that work. I'm going to lift weights, watch TV, play basketball, and hang out. So we fail the inmate and we fail society. And yeah, it's a necessary, unfortunately, expense that we have, but it doesn't have to be an exorbitant expense where we're giving them all those things in addition to not only setting them up for failure, but letting them hang out, watch TV, having the taxpayers pay for weights and all these other things so that they don't have to deal with these issues and come back out the same way they went in. So, we have to pay the burden, but my job is to control those costs and hope that we keep these people from coming back and adding on an additional burden. I got to go to break now. That was a great question. And thank you for calling in, and thanks for your insight. Good afternoon, everyone. It's Sheriff Tom Hodgson filling in for Barry Richards, who's out having a blast somewhere while the rest of us are working. But anyway, I'm happy to fill in for him today. And it's been a great opportunity to hear from a lot of people in the community and beyond. And we're going to go back to callers, try to get at least one or two callers in the next few minutes. Caller, you there?
Yes, Sheriff Hodgson, how are you?
Caller, how are you?
First, I want to say that I think you're doing a great job in there. But I did have one question, like almost like about last year. Are you going to be going to the feast drinking again with your sidearm this year?
Well, you know what? I like having a celebratory, glass of Madeira wine. It's a tradition. I probably, obviously, would not certainly have it. I failed to pull my shirt out, of course, which was a mistake on my part. And as I said, I likely will not be doing that. But there was, as you know, there was no violation. Of course, it's just that sometimes people will make impressions and say, "Oh, Jesus, they're doing something wrong." And of course, the celebratory piece following that parade was unfortunately played into something that was an unfortunate decision on my part. That I would have been better had I been able to know that the thing was exposed, which I didn't. I normally pull my shirt out.
Yeah, good. It's just because I don't want a lot of other people with their sidearms out there. You know what I'm saying? But keep doing a good job, Sheriff. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, thank God we have people with sidearms in this country, because the Second Amendment's an important amendment, and we know that when you're around big crowds and things, that certain things can happen, and you want to make sure somebody's there that's qualified to mitigate the circumstance. So thanks for calling in and offering that great advice. Caller, we got 30 seconds. Well, we're probably not going to be able to go to the caller. I think we're going to have to break for news. But I know we have a caller waiting, and I hope you'll hang on the line. We got lots to talk about, and we're having great discussions around issues, particularly around Bristol County and even some nationally. So hang in there, and we're going to go to the news, and we'll be right back. Good afternoon, everyone. We're coming up on the last hour. This is Sheriff Tom Hodgson filling in for Barry Richards. And wow, the first 2 hours seem to fly by, but I'm sure the next hour will be as lively as the first two. And I'm looking forward to hearing from callers to continue discussing what issues are important to you here in Massachusetts, but even nationally. And I think I want to go right to the caller who's been very patient for waiting. Caller, thanks for being so patient and waiting.
Hi, Sheriff Hodgson. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good, thank you. I was wondering if I could ask you a question regarding mental health and suicide rates in our county prisons.
Sure.
Okay. Well, as I'm sure you know, the New England Center for Investigative Reporting published an article about our whole state had a problem with prison suicides that drove federal attention. Unfortunately, they reported that our county between 2006 to 2016, even though we have 13% of the prison population of our state, we accounted for a quarter of all prison suicides in our state. Have there been things that have changed that we've been able to possibly curb that?
Well, yeah, that's a great question, caller, and it's first let me tell you that I'm going to give you just a couple quick statistics. First of all, the suicides in prisons are mirroring the increase in suicides on the outside of prisons, unfortunately. And moving upward rather than down, but in the prison system, in prisons across the nation, the national average for prison suicides is 50 per 100,000. Over my 20 years, we calculated the number of suicides in 20 years, and our number is 8 per 100,000. In our highest segment, which they reported on, I think it was 5 years.
Yeah, I remember you said that before, but that would just be saying that the New England Center
2016 we were at 32 per 100,000, which is obviously much higher than the 8. But what happens in prisons is there are these anomalies, and what's really unusual in these kinds of circumstances that underscores my point is that our staff have continually looked at the evolving issues. We have a serious opioid crisis in our county. They did a study of all the counties throughout the United States, and in each state, a county was identified as the worst county in that state for drug abuse. Bristol County, unfortunately, took that that title here in Massachusetts, and so that obviously plays into the challenges of detox and what people's mental states are going through it and all of that. So what we've done, and we've continued to do, as every prison does, of course, we take a look and we take suicides very, very seriously. Is there something that we could have done to prevent it? Our medical team, our mental health team, our security team, and anytime there's a suicide, sit down and go, is there something we missed? What could we have done differently? And over the course of time, we developed a behavioral unit. We're the only one in the state where somewhere close to 5 or 6 county sheriffs send their worst people to us to go through our behavioral unit. And the actual vendor that we have for our medical services and mental health, the owner is a psychiatrist who has, for his entire career, focused on suicides. So in spite of all that, we had these anomalies that can happen in a prison where suddenly, as much as you've done all these things to try to prevent it, suddenly something happens. And there's nothing worse for both the mental health treatment people in our facilities and our officers and our staff than to have to experience that. Because, and never mind for the poor families of the individual. But the point is that it is bothersome to all of us because it cuts to the heart of what we're all about, which is care and custody, making sure people are safe while they're with us, making sure that all the support is there and the systems we have in place. And so as things evolve, as they do, and the best example is if you looked at Ash Street when it first opened, we were housing pirates and buccaneers. People were being held on things like $5 debt, public drunkenness. Today, you wouldn't see that in a prison. Things have evolved through society to a point where we have more violence, more drug use, and we have to adjust as that goes along. So, look, I was at the National Sheriff's Conference a couple months ago, and they had a session on suicides, and the place was packed with sheriffs and professionals from different sheriff's offices around the country, because it is such a big issue and such a problem for everybody. And I think most of the listeners know, as you probably do, caller, that unfortunately Massachusetts eliminated all the mental health hospitals and turned the prisons into their mental health facilities. And so, and along with that, gave us the expectations that we would have the same services or level of services that you could get in a mental health hospital. Well, that's not true. How could you? We have schedules. We have to move people for security purposes to make sure that the meal times and everything else, which cut into your ability to be able to have those same flexibilities. Yet we continue to sit down and find ways to see if we can improve anything. And we're actually getting ready to pilot some a tool that's been developed by the owner of this company that will measure the algorithms of someone that we may have identified as a possible suicide risk, to let the officer know and warn the officer at the time the person is thinking about committing suicide. So we're feeling hopeful about that will be something that will be an additional tool that will help us minimize the chance. We've done more training for officers to always say, look, make sure if you see somebody that's on a phone call and they get off and they're irritated, whether you think they're going to do something themselves or not, still call mental health if they've shown a change in behavior, just to be sure. So we're taking all these precautionary measures, but it's going to continue to be a challenge always. Suicides always are, whether you're in a prison or a mental institution. I don't know, most listeners may not know this, but think about this. In the mental health hospitals, the facilities that's what they do, 6% of the patients in mental health hospitals commit suicide. A psychiatric nurse will experience a suicide once every 2 to 2.5 years. So it's a serious problem. It's one difficult to predict or put your hands on or finger on as to when somebody's thinking about doing it. But yes, every day we look at what can we do, what are the new cutting edge developments anywhere around the prison systems in the country that we could adopt to make it less likely that somebody could commit suicide. But it's a great question, and I appreciate you calling and asking it. That is something that we struggle with, all of us in corrections across the country.
Do you mind if I ask a short follow-up question?
No, not at all.
Okay. So in direct answer to my question, you didn't say, do you believe that the New England Center had accurate figures?
Oh, their figures are correct. But if you, I don't know how the New England, of course, they're a very liberal group and they're not big fans of mine, but that's another story. But having said that, I wonder how they would report and justify all the years where we had no suicides. How is it when that happened 10 years ago? We had no suicides for a stretch of, 3-4 years. Are they suggesting that we got worse in our mental health care 10 years later?
It was just mentioned that it was a state review. We just happened to have the lower grade for that. However, you stated that you felt it was because of opioids and the closing of mental health centers, and possibly because other counties send us inmates with mental health issues because of your programs? No. I'm saying there's two things there. One is, I'm not saying that it was strictly because of the opioids. I was simply telling you that the challenge to deal with suicides has evolved and become more difficult because people are using drugs. And one of the other statistics I think is important for you to know, and the listeners, MASAC, which is the Massachusetts Alcohol Substance Abuse Addiction Center, which are court-ordered commitments to this alcohol center for 30 days by the courts. They have about 200 people on average in there a day. They detox at the MASAC state facility, state alcohol addiction center. They detox 8.1 people on average per day. Do you know how many we detox just in Bristol County? 7.9. So you can imagine the magnitude of the challenge that we have with regards to the opioid crisis in having to detox people who go through these withdrawals and things, and those kinds of, the drug use does complicate and make more difficult
the challenge of trying to prevent suicides because of their mental states. So I'm not making excuses. I'm simply saying that things are evolving in this prison system, and we have to constantly, to your point, change and look for new ways to address the new challenges, which we always do. I forget the last point you made on your question or your follow-up.
That other counties are sending us inmates with mental health issues. Is that impacting our numbers as well? Or
No. What that's doing is what my point about that is that because we are the only one that developed a behavioral unit that can try to minimize the dysfunctional behaviors, the other facilities are sending their worst people to us to try to help get these people under control. Middlesex sent us somebody not too long ago that they absolutely said, look, we cannot control this person. We have no way to deal with them. Can we send them to your behavioral unit? We said, absolutely. They came to our behavioral unit, went through our behavioral course in that particular unit, and they went back to Middlesex, and they've never been a problem since. So I only bring that up because these are the kinds of things that we're doing around suicides, around behavioral issues that can impact suicides. But we never stop. We meet with our mental health people. Anybody that's in segregation, our mental health people meet on a regular basis with our security people to discuss people that are in segregation, what is their status every week, and do they need to be brought out? Are there any evolving changes that we need to be aware of? And so it's a constant assessment to try to prevent things from happening. I appreciate you calling in, caller. Very, very great question, and thanks for the opportunity to follow up.
Thank you.
Caller, you there? Nope, no callers. Well, this is Sheriff Tom Hodgson filling in for Barry Richards. We're talking about all kinds of issues, particularly local issues, but we're open to discussing the national trends and what's going on out there in the United States in regards to the economy, regards to the immigration issues, and on and on and on. Give me a shout at 508-996-0500, 996-0500. We're going to go to a break, and we'll be right back. You got to give Taylor a lot of credit. He picks the best music for intros, and he asked me at the beginning, and I was like, I don't know, Simon and Garfunkel, and he kind of looked at me with this like weird look. But no, this I'm happy to be as Sheriff Tom Hodgson filling in for Barry Richards for this last hour, going on to the 3 o'clock hour, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and hear from people in the community about the things that are important to them and on their minds. And so we're gonna continue with the callers, and I think we have a caller on the air right now. Caller, you there?
Good afternoon, Sheriff.
Hi, caller. How are you?
Let's first start it off by saying I've probably voted for you for every time you've run, and I will continue to vote for you every time you run. And you're doing one hell of a job.
Well, let me say thank you for your support and for your vote.
Well, number one, I've been around a long, long time, and it's becoming more and more apparent that our public servants who we elect and are supposed to be working for us don't do that anymore, at least not in my eyes, not the way it used to be. And you're one of the standout guys who was out there doing what you were elected to do. Keep it up.
Well, thank you, caller. You know, I would tell you that one of my great frustrations has always been, and I spoke about both sides of the aisle in Washington, and I think most people feel this now. When you look at what's going on down there, this idea that you're going to spend your time, we send you to Washington, fighting over your ideologies and your political positions, as opposed to the people's issues and doing something, coming out with some real results around the most important issues that face the American people, that are costing them more money, costing loss of lives of their family members, and on and on and on. And it's sort of like, you know what? We're going to sit under this dome. We're going to do our insider baseball, and we'll get to you all. I like to describe it, and we even see it a bit in Massachusetts and probably in other legislatures around the country. People, I think when they run for office, they oftentimes, more often than not, they're very interested in making a difference, legitimately, and on both sides of the aisle. But when they get up
they
there,
start out that way.
Yeah, well, I think they do initially believe that they can, and regardless of their ideology, I think they want to espouse whatever it is because they think that's the best road to get there, and that's fine. That's what makes the world go round and makes us stronger. But what happens is, unfortunately, they get up there under the dome, and whether it's here or down in Washington, and all of a sudden it's insider baseball. People are on the outside going, hey, I need some help over here in this neighborhood, and they can't hear us. You know why?
Absolutely nothing.
They're more interested in arguing over their politics, pushing, and I describe it as pushing things through your personal political filter first, making sure you capture whatever is on that side for you personally to benefit politically. Say what you have to say, do what you have to do, hold to this line of thinking, and then whatever comes out the other side, if it's watered down and left over for the people, well, that's what you get.
The other problem is the people who have their ears are lobbyists. And I always thought that we elected politicians to serve us,
right? And
not to serve a lobbyist or a company or a country or any entity like that at all. I thought they were there basically to serve the people.
You know, and caller, I think you raise a very important point, and I'll tell you why. I really, in my humble opinion, I believe what's happened. I've been doing this for over 20 years. Of course, I was a city councilor in New Bedford before I became sheriff. But what I believe has happened is when things were going well and people owned 2 cars and a home and maybe a vacation home, whatever, and the economy was good, nobody really paid attention. They basically, and then the evolution of the iPads and the iPhones and all of that, people became more and more driven by those things and less interested in paying attention, trusting that the people in Washington and other places were doing their job. And then suddenly when the economy started going bad, people started looking a little closer and going, what the heck's going on? And yet Congress, particularly Congress, they love it when the public just continues to be divided because it takes the spotlight off of them, and they are the problem. So what I think has to happen, and I'm working with sheriffs across this country right now because I know that people do mobilize around the sheriffs and trust us, that we're more interested in what's happening because we have our finger on the pulse in our communities, in our counties, that they're willing, that we have to mobilize this nation and people to get back involved and say, you know what, if you're going to represent me, don't go down there and spend your time. I'm paying your salary. Don't go down there and spend your time focusing on what's going to get you reelected. Have the courage to do what's right and not what you think is politically correct, even if you think it might be contrary to some people that otherwise might have voted for you in the past, if you believe it's right for the people and you believe it's right for the quality of life of that community, you have an obligation to do that. You have an obligation to do it.
And it's just become more and more evident constantly. And you started the show out by saying that the country's become more divisive. You can't talk. I've got that in my own family. I don't argue with people about politics. I don't bring it up because I don't want to hear the screaming and hollering. And I would never ever force my view or scream and holler. But I think someone should at least pleasantly listen to my idea, and then I'll listen to yours. But that's not happening anymore. And I find a big reason for that is we had a candidate that called half this nation deplorables. Yes. When in your mind have you ever? I've been around a long time. I've voted for a lot of presidents.
Yep.
And I can't remember any candidate ever calling half the United States citizens deplorable.
Right. And again, you raise a great point. And and I wouldn't just blame it on that candidate.
No, it's not just that one. I'm just saying politics in general.
Yes. When you're called deplorable because you happen to believe a different philosophy. Remember when Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, they would argue vociferously over issues. But publicly, they would not in an emotional way or a mean way, but they'd argue their different.
At the end of the day, they went out to dinner and shook hands and said, that was a good argument today.
I don't know how often they went out to dinner, but I can tell you this much: they like to pop a few over some poker games in the White House, I think. But
there you go.
But you know what? But they saw themselves as public servants fighting for their positions and their differences and how to get there. But they didn't take it personally. They didn't say, hey, okay, you don't agree with me? You're a jerk. Start demonizing the president or the president demonizing Tip O'Neill. These were people that knew and showed us the example of how to have civil discourse around our opposing points of view, understanding that by doing that, we were going to be stronger in the end. Because if Tip O'Neill argued with the president on a certain issue and he made him, and the president was willing to listen, he'd go, you know what, I may not change my mind completely, but you've raised some really good points that made me think differently. And isn't that really what we're supposed to be about as human beings?
It's supposed to be working back and forth,
Work together.
And one last issue, and you touch on it all the time, is immigration. And I have this, and I constantly see illegals can't get welfare, illegals can't get EBT cards, illegals can't. And I don't know when this newscast was put on, but someone sent it to me yesterday where it was just 25, but if there was 25 that they could round it up in this batch, imagine how many there were, with all these illegal licenses from Massachusetts, and once they got them, they were getting EBT cards, and they were all illegal immigrants.
Yes. Yeah, and you know what?
So it is happening.
Yeah, there's no question it's happening. It's costing us about $1.8 billion in Massachusetts.
Imagine what we could do for our seniors who are on Social Security, who paid into this their entire lives.
Yes.
We could increase. My mother, God bless her soul, she was getting $600 a month when she finally succumbed to this world. And she probably could have been getting $1,000. She wasn't looking for much, but $1,000 a month would have gone a long way to making her better.
And they deserve it. They guided us, took us through, brought us to where we are today.
And went through
in their senior years, when through no fault of their own, they have challenges physically and otherwise. Why wouldn't they get the rewards of having, built our society, supported our churches, civic organizations, and on and on and on? And so your point is very well taken. The other thing that you raised, which I think most listeners out there probably, I hope, agree, that this idea of these pro-illegal people that are pushing for sanctuaries and all of this stuff, have you ever noticed that whenever they talk about illegals, they say that
immigrants,
we're against immigrants? No, we're not against immigrants.
No,
our country. My father was an immigrant.
My grandfather was an immigrant.
My father was an immigrant. So you know what? We're not anti-immigrant. We're anti-illegal. And you know what? We ought to be. And we ought not to apologize that we don't agree with people who violate laws and think that they should be made a special class of people who are going to get exceptions that others don't get in our country. It's wrong. And the American people have a right to rise up and say, no, you come here illegally.
You keep up the good fight for us, guy.
You made that choice. You broke the law. You knew you broke the law. And so why should you avoid consequences? And I often tell people that all these pro-illegal people, what they ought to do is why don't they? Would they have a problem if somebody climbed over their fence in their yard, set up a tent, and then they called the police and said, "Hey, somebody's in my backyard camping out," and the police came and said, which they would, particularly under the Obama administration, "Hey, I'm sorry, ma'am or sir, but if that person made it over your fence, they get to stay." And not only that, you need to provide them an electric cord if they want electricity. You got to provide them food, medical care. If they want to go to school, make sure they can get there. Oh, and by the way, if they decide to leave your backyard and start breaking into people's homes and stealing property from your neighbors, you can call us all you want, but we'll come, but we can't do anything to remove them from your neighborhood until they're not arrested for 3 misdemeanors, but convicted for 3 misdemeanors, and then we can remove them. And I was saying that to a crowd of about 300 people down at the Fisherman Club one night, and people were gasping, going, "What?" And I said, "Welcome to America."
Yeah.
Welcome to America. You make it over that, you make it over the border illegally, and we're gonna take care of you and give you probably more benefits than you otherwise would get if you're an American citizen or somebody came here legally.
My whole thing with the people who are promoting and saying, "Oh yeah," one of the guys in my shop, I looked at him and I said, "I've done very well for myself in my life. I won't deny that I have good money. And
I'm sure you work for it.
I am comfortable, but no education, and I worked for it." And this gentleman is sitting there, and I'm saying to him, and he's always arguing. I said, "Yeah, okay, Steve, okay." And the other day I looked at him and I said, "Okay, so all these women with these children have no place to go. I'll tell you what I'll do. Put your money where your mouth is. All these people should be able to be here. I'll take in a family if you take in a family. In fact, you know what? I have a little bit more money than you. I'll take in 2 families. I will do it. I'll do it in my house. I'll bring in 2 families into my house if you bring one into your house." And he said, "Well, that's ridiculous. I can't afford it." And I looked at him and said, "Neither can anybody else in this country."
Well, that was a great argument. I got to let you go, caller, because I got another call on the air. Thanks for calling in. Have a great weekend. Hey, caller, you there?
Yes, I am. Hey, Sheriff. I got 2 quick points.
Sure.
One on the illegal immigration thing. The biggest problem I have, or the argument of, yeah, they broke in, but they're just trying to make a better life for themselves, even though they committed a crime. Well, my argument back to that is, okay, at what point are we going to say to them, it's not okay to commit a crime to make your life better? Say they come in, they're working, they broke in, but it's okay because they're trying to better their lives, and it's still not going the way they want, so they can, now they can go knock over a liquor store because they still don't have enough money to make their life better? That's the whole point of why we have laws of, it stops right here. You don't come in. It's against the law. If you do, you're out. That's it.
Right. I'm sorry. No,
I just want to get to the other point quick. It was just a suggestion to you. I don't want to tell you how to do your job.
No, I'm open.
But that woman that's supposed to be protesting tonight or later today or whatever, if it were me, I would personally send about 6 meals out to her and the protesters and say, "This is the food we're serving for tonight's dinner. You're welcome to try it." There'll be reporters out there. You know what I mean? So now she's got to try the food right in front of people. As like I said, I would give enough. Let some of the other protesters try it too. Let them know what they're protesting.
Yeah, I hear you. It would be interesting, but I wouldn't want to give her any credibility, or any validation that she even ought to be out there to begin with. I mean, you can look. She can look at our reports. We're nationally accredited. We're in the top 10 percentile of correctional facilities in the nation. We've heard people say we're filthy conditions. You drive down to our Dartmouth complex and come down the driveway. As soon as you do, you're going to see perfectly manicured lawns, no garbage, no trash cans overflowing. You don't walk on there, see that level of accountability, and then expect you're going to walk in the door of the prison and suddenly we have we have filthy floors, we have garbage on the floor. It's ridiculous. But
I don't doubt you for a second.
Sure.
But the only point I'm saying to it is I understand where you're coming from. Where you're saying, listen, I've got all this documentation and all these independent studies and all that, and you're right. But even though you have that, they're not listening to it. They're still trying to protest you.
Right. Oh, yeah, of course. They're going to do that.
My point is, I would throw it in their face. That's what these people do. It should be protesting something else next week. But my point is, I would throw it in her face in front of a camera and say, this is the food you're protesting. Try it. Right. Tell me what your problem is with it. Because, all the facts in the world aren't helping.
Right.
She's still going to be there. That's what I'm saying. I would just put it right on her, and here it is, what don't you like about it? Because one of the things I don't know if you saw any of the things during the whole BLM movement, there are a lot of people who are protesting the use of force in certain situations and all that. Well, there was a couple of news stories. They actually took a couple of the leaders and put them through like scenarios. And when they put these guys through the scenarios of what was happening in the situation for the police, they either got killed or they killed the wrong person too. So it kind of gave them a sense of what the police were going through, right?
Sure.
And a lot of them were like, "Wow, I never realized this. Maybe I should shut up," kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's just kind of where I was coming.
Well, no, I hear your point. I think it's a fair one. What I would tell you that my experience has been for the people like the groups that Marlene Pollock are associated with, who are really socialist groups, that they won't take you up on those things because they don't want to know the truth. They don't want to. You could put the meal out there and they'll say, hey, listen, you know what? I'm not interested in eating the meal. I'd rather pretend that what the person that told me who had an agenda said is really true, not what was. In fact, my PIO, when the lady had claimed that, I don't know if you heard earlier on the show, I was talking about a woman who was a detainee who got deported to Morocco and claimed that the officers, she was in segregation for 3 days when she wasn't, said that the officers were going to force food down her throat. She was on a hunger strike for 3 days, which she wasn't. That when my PIO called the sort of left-wing group that was printing this thing out, sending it around the country, said, wait a minute, that's not true. Let me tell you what the facts are. You know what the reporter said? Well, that person's attorney said that happened, and they just wouldn't put in our side of the story, what was really true, because it didn't fit their agenda. So it's unfortunately how these groups act, and we've seen it time and time again with the Marlene Pollocks of the world and other people.
I feel for you. Honestly, I wouldn't want your job.
Well, people say that to me, and they go, my daughter said, gee, Dad, how can you stand? I'd be so frustrated. I said, you know what? I told my daughter, I said, I grew up in a family of 13 kids. It's like being around my dining room table again with my 12 brothers and sisters. I don't mind it at all. It gives me a chance not to let them hide in the shadows and preach all this propaganda, and give the public the opportunity to hear the other side. Because if I didn't, these people would be much further along pushing their socialist agenda, which would undermine, everything our forefathers created for us and the opportunities for people in the future in our country. So, caller, thanks for calling in. I got to go to a break, and we're going to come back. There's another caller call in, and I hope you'll hold on until we get back through the break and pay some of these bills. Thanks. We'll be right back. Good afternoon, everyone. We're coming up. We're coming up on the 3 o'clock hour pretty soon, and this is Sheriff Tom Hodgson filling in for Barry Richards, and I really appreciated the opportunity to host his show today and hear from a lot of different people in the community about their issues, concerns, and perspectives, and so I hope anyone that is thinking about calling in will now take the opportunity between now and 3 o'clock to do it. Because I'll be off the air at that point, and you'll have to hang on to that question and maybe never get the answer. So we got a caller on the line right now, and caller, you there?
Yeah.
Thanks for hanging in.
Okay. Your listeners ought to know that Marlene Pollock, the woman that will be up at Bond's Corner today, is a self-proclaimed communist. Mm-hmm. And they have an agenda, and they don't want to know. You're absolutely right. They don't want to know what the truth is. They want to further their agenda. Have a good one.
Well, thank you, caller. And I think that's pretty. I think it's pretty widely known in this area about the motivations. And yes, there is a history. I think it goes back to the 70s. I'm understanding in relation to Congress looking into some of the activities up here. But look, I have no problem with people having different points of view. What my problem is that when you have people like Marlene Pollock who hide in the shadows and start preaching to us that somehow we're not doing things the right way, and doing that with propaganda and misinformation and lies, I have a problem with that. And I think most people do. Nobody wants to. And listeners oftentimes will just, oh, really, that happened? Because somebody said it. But the truth is, we know that she has a long history of doing this. I recall her being up there with some others at Boston when I was testifying on illegals not being illegal aliens not being able to get driver's licenses. That they came up there and started suggesting that I shouldn't be there and testifying about this because I should be doing my job because we had suicides in our prison and all of that. That's all nonsense. And but it sounds good to them, and it sort of rallies their base. But look, I'm here to represent the interests of the people that elected me, and I'm not going to stand by and allow anyone to suggest that we aren't going to do our job and support the public safety interests of the people. I got to go to the next caller. We're getting short on time. Thanks for calling in. Caller, you there?
Hey, Sheriff, how are you?
Good, caller. How are you?
Good. Hey, Sheriff, I really believe that there's a compromise to every problem. I think the compromise should be this, and I mentioned this before, for the people like the Pollocks and also like Ward 4 City Councilwoman, what they should do is this. We have an illegal problem, which everyone knows. You have some people being held at the correction office, going through the process. How about this? They sponsor an illegal alien, take them to their house. They're responsible for their clothing, for their medical care, for finding them a job. And if they break the law, we to them for liability. I think that's a good compromise if they're so passionate.
Yeah, that's never going to happen. I think
Well, that's when they should shut up then.
Yeah.
Because we have laws. That's how this function works. It's a republic, and it has a constitution. And I'm tired of hearing about how the Statue of Liberty and those rights on a Statue of Liberty that she holds on the book, that is a farce. That was a gift given by France. It has nothing to do with the Constitution of the United States. But again, we don't teach our children U.S. history. We don't teach our children civics. And we're raising a generation of morons.
Yeah, and they want to erase history. They want to tear down statues. And it's interesting. I was talking about these people who are saying, "Oh, we need to tear down all these statues because they represent this and that." Look, I told my grandsons, I said, if you go down to Washington D.C. and you're near the reflecting pool, there's just near the Roosevelt Memorial. There's a very prominent, wonderful statue of Martin Luther King. And I said, if I were taking you down there, here's what I would be telling you, because Martin Luther King is looking across the tidal basin at the Jefferson Memorial. And I would say to my grandsons, listen, that man, this huge figure that's standing right here, Martin Luther King, was a man who spoke about peace, peaceful change. And he's looking over at a monument to a president of the United States who had slaves. And I would say that
Sheriff,
back in that day,
Martin Luther King,
believe it or not, it was okay
would not be
for
so
people
revered
to own
today as
other
he was
people
back then,
as
because
slaves
you have to
and
realize
use them
what
for
you know.
hard labor and not
He was
treat
a
them
preacher and a man of
as
God.
every
which
human being
in
should be
this
treated.
day and age, you got a big target
Yet,
on
this man,
everyone who speaks the word of God. So I
Martin
think that
Luther
Martin
King,
Luther King wouldn't be so
he saw
respected
history
now.
for what it was, and he stood on the steps of that Lincoln Memorial and talked about having a dream that all men would be created equal, that all men would be treated equal. And you know what? He didn't go march and break down statues or go over and demand that the Jefferson Memorial be taken down, because he understood that that served as that measure of how far this country's come in our understanding about humanity and the importance of treating people equally.
I think the
we
country
have
that you're
wrongful
talking
times
about.
in our history. He didn't go out hating people.
Yeah,
he talked about love and understanding. And today, we've gotten so far away from that. And these people, these radical groups who go out there and try to say we can't have laws and we shouldn't have laws, and some people should be able to break those laws, and on and on and on and on. It's the very thing that's undermining all of those teachings of Martin Luther King and all the people who are trying to unite this country in a way that gives us the opportunities and enforces and supports the laws on the books so that we can continue to have the democracy and the republic that people over all our short history have wanted to be a part of. And so it's sad, but it's the realities. And what we need to do is we need to support our laws. If Congress wants to change a law, then have the courage to change it. But don't sit there and create a law and then tell law enforcement, no, don't enforce that law. No, you change it. You put it on the books. You change it. Otherwise, the laws are going to be enforced. It's the oath we took. Caller, I got to go to the next caller because we're going short time. Thanks so much for the call. Hi, caller. You there?
Yes. Is it me?
Yeah, you're on the air.
Yes, thank you. I'm so glad pleased to hear you. I'm sorry I missed most of the program, but I did want to say this, that I listened to something or watched something on YouTube, and one of the things that was talked about that I have not heard discussed in any of the conversation about immigration, illegal immigration, is that the people who are coming are people of means, and they're able to pay the coyotes and do that kind of thing, leaving the poorest of the poor behind to fend for themselves. I don't know if anybody has any more information or data on that, but what they were saying was, the people that have the money to pay the whatever amount it costs to hire somebody to bring you over or bring your children, that it's people that have some money.
Yeah, well, they're paying. You're right, caller. There are people over there that are paying $5,000 to $7,000 to a coyote from the drug cartels to cart or mule their family member over. And what's sad about this is, all these people are claiming, it's good that these people can come here. What's happening is these mothers are handing off their teenage daughters to these strangers, giving them birth control pills before they hand them off to the stranger to head off for this 1,000-mile trek to the border, knowing that their daughter's probably going to get raped at least once. The child gets here, been exposed to this trauma, nobody to support her family members aren't there, sent off to New Bedford or Fall River or somewhere else in a community she doesn't know, doesn't speak the language, doesn't understand the culture, and is expected to survive, put in a foster care home where when she walks out in the neighborhood after school is probably going to be the weakest link in the neighborhood and victimized time and time again. And this is going on all over the country. So you're correct about that. And so, yes, the people that are encouraging this kind of thing have no understanding of what's actually happened. Those of us who've been to the border, and I've been there 3 times, I know what's going on. And so does so many other people around the country. But,
it's what
this is what these progressives are sort of throwing out there. And to the other point you made, which is very important, the people that they're encouraging to come work here illegally are people that many of them who aren't going to commit crimes have a work ethic, who want to have a job. But what we're doing is we're stripping the best of the best from these countries. And so those countries will never be able to get on their feet because the best of the best workers are coming here illegally. And instead what we ought to do is the United States ought to say to places like Mexico, Guatemala, wherever they're having these corrupt governments, to tell them, look, we are not going to give you any more financial aid till you get your house in order, get your police departments to follow along the rules and treat the people properly. and start to build your culture. I mean, your economy and so forth in a honest and fair way. Otherwise, we're not going to give you the money. And that's really what we have to do. I got to go to break right now. We may have time for one more caller afterwards, but hang in there for these of you on the line. We'll be right back. We're back. This Sheriff Tom Hodgson filling in for Barry Richards. We're running up on the top of the hour, which will end my hosting today. But we do have a caller on the line, and I want to go right to the caller. Caller, you there?
Yeah, I'm right here. Yeah,
I'm right here too.
Yeah, you're doing a great job, and it's too bad that you have to run into obstacles like our politicians. Who don't even know the law. And,
well, caller, thank you for that. But, I expect, and I have no problem with credit. We're open. We're not a perfect agency. We're always open to improving our operations and so forth. But to your point, when people are throwing out criticisms that are absolutely contrary to the truth, that's where we have a problem. That's where we draw the line. But give me legitimate criticisms, things that we can improve upon. I'm there all day long, and I think that's what people expect of us. I mean, we don't. We're an open book and always will be. So I appreciate you calling in. I wish I had another hour to listen to a lot more callers because it's been such a great opportunity to hear from the community. I enjoyed doing this, and maybe at some point in the future I'll have an opportunity to do it again. But I know I'm no Barry Richard, but I have to tell you, I'm no Taylor Cormier either, and he's done an awesome job running this board and so forth. So I don't want you to think I'm that talented. I'm not. But again, Taylor, thanks for everything. It's been a great opportunity. Thanks, callers. Have a great weekend.